good afternoon or evening or whenever it is you are watching this presentation. Hopefully you're at school having a nice professional development session. I am so honored to be here with you today to talk about being real. And while everything is getting loaded, I just want to thank Carmen Villalobos for inviting me to offer this presentation to you guys. If you have been in Cumberland County for a while, you've probably heard me speak more than you want to, but I'm always honored to be asked and invited because I think Carmen just knows I have a big mouth and I like to talk about what's happening in my classroom. So I certainly hope you will enjoy that too. And this afternoon or morning or whenever, I'm just going to share a couple thoughts that have been rolling around in my head. But let me introduce myself formally first. Whoops, just a little too fast. My name is Carmen Scoggins, and you can find me at carmenscoggins@gmail or find me on Twitter, all of the social media platforms I'm available. And just so you know, I have been teaching Spanish for 29 years, and I don't even know how that's possible that it's been 29 years. Where has the time gone? But that is my reality. So whatever stage of your career you're in, I hope you are finding it as rewarding as I still do. I'm not quite finished yet, so maybe you'll hear more from me in the future. Okay, so let's get started. So this session is called BeReal. And you're probably familiar with the app. If you teach high school kids or if you have teenagers at home, they probably have the BeReal app. So you might be asking yourself, what is BeReal? And this session is not at all about the app. So don't think that that's what we're going to talk about today. But BeReal, it says right here, it's an app that notifies you when to take a picture. So I just got my notification a few minutes ago. I did not stop to take the picture, but you've only got 2 minutes. I think that's kind of an intriguing thing for kids, is that they're like, oh, I have to stop what I'm doing right now. I don't know how many times a day I'm asked, well, only one time a day, but how many times in the fall I was asked, Scog Dog, that's what my students call me, Scog Dog, can you take my BeReal with me? And I was like, what are you talking about? So I teach high school, by the way, I didn't mention that. And I also teach at Appalachian State University, the methods class. So I teach future language teachers. But all that aside, BeReal is in the moment. And it's awesome because it allows you to take a picture of what you're doing in the moment. It's very authentic. And that's what made me title this presentation BeReal, because you guys, I know, are focusing on proficiency and literacy. And there's nothing more appropriate than to be real about how we're doing that in the classroom. And also the idea of authenticity that BeReal brings to the app. I was thinking of how we can relate that to using authentic resources. So that's why I had this idea. So the presentation's not about the app, but here we go. You ready to be real? Okay. So there's this idea. Let me move this camera down here, my face down here. There's this idea of the duality of the phone. Okay, so when you have the camera and you're taking your BeReal, it's utilizing the rear camera and the front camera. So I was thinking about the analogy that brings to our discussion. The front camera, who are your learners? Who are you looking at every single day? And what are they looking back at? That's the terrifying part, is what do they see in me and what do they see in my lessons? And I mentioned this, that both cameras are in sync and both views are happening at the same time. And that's intriguing to me because I think sometimes that what I'm putting out for students to grab hold of, they might not be receiving it the way I think they should be. So we'll talk a little bit about that too. Also, the back camera is facing towards me. So I need to be sure I'm being true to best practices, but also I have to reflect a lot on what do I see in myself? What am I bringing to the table? Am I doing everything I need to be doing? And also I mentioned that we post this so other people can see it, but sometimes when we put things out there, people see things differently. So again, it's a lot to think about, all the moving parts that are happening in the classroom in a single day. And I don't think a lot of people realize what we go through each day. So in terms of what we're going to discuss right now, just think of those 2 cameras, the front and the back. You're looking at your students, but you're also looking at yourself. Okay. All right, I'm going to move this back up here. So our goals for our time together, I can create scaffolded activities to support student learning. I'm going to give you a couple of resources for that. I can select authentic resources that match my learning targets. We love authentic resources, don't we? And I can tweak an activity I already have to make it better so I can meet the needs of my students. Okay. Okay, so I decided to break this down into 3 reels. So realistic, realign, and realize. And we're going to go through each of these sections together. I'm going to give you as many student examples as I can. I will talk to you about a couple of technology tools. This isn't a super tech heavy session, but hopefully you'll get some new ideas. Also, I can be available as you're doing the professional development or afterwards if you have any further questions for me. So let's start with realistic. The idea of just literally being real. We have to know who our learners are. We have to build relationships with our students. But we also have to be true to ourselves and not forget what we know about teaching and learning in the classroom. And also, what is our bandwidth? Like, how much time do we have to give? How much time do we have to plan? I am not married and don't have any kids, so I work a lot. And as I mentioned, I teach all day and then I run over to the university and teach in the afternoons. And I just like to work a lot. But most people need to set some boundaries. Any day now, I'm going to learn how to do that. But be real about your time and energy. And then we'll realign. We'll think about what we want to do in the classroom. And in terms of proficiency, are our learning targets even aligned properly? We'll talk a little bit about input and output from students, input from us and output from students. And then maybe we can rework some of those vetted activities that we have, but that we know we could do a little bit better. And finally, realize, this is the part I'm most excited about. Language needs to be practical and accessible. And I think that we need to make our students realize that what they're facing in the classroom every day isn't daunting and isn't scary. It's just a natural part of life, how we acquire language. So those are the 3 reels we're going to focus on. Okay, we'll start with realistic. So realistic is defined by Oxford as having or showing a sensible and practical idea of what can be achieved or expected. That's what I just kind of went over. What can we expect from ourselves? What can we expect from our students? I'm representing familiar things in a way that is accurate and true to life. There goes that idea going back to authentic resources, and we'll come to that in a little bit. What can I say? I mentioned I've been teaching 29 years. I'm older. I'm a veteran teacher, and today's learners are not at all what they used to be. I taught elementary, middle school Spanish for 9 years before moving to the high school 20 years ago. And I've also been adjunct at the university for 20 years. So I've really taught every grade level. And let me tell you, this generation is just different. Like when I was in school, I loved it. I was ready to learn every day. I was intrinsically motivated. And I'm just not seeing that in today's learners. And that's because they're not supposed to be like we were 20 years ago. So Gen Z students are different, okay? This is a little hard to see, but this should be linked for you and then you can make it bigger. But they view the teacher as a facilitator. They crave feedback. They want validation in what they're doing. We have to keep that in mind. Also, one of the things that screams to me on this infographic, my colleague Savannah and I made this, but it says that these learners have an 8-second attention span. 8 seconds. Okay, so that means that when we're up in front of them or doing our thing or giving it our all, you know, they've tuned us out pretty quickly because 8 seconds. And I blame technology and apps like BeReal. You have 2-minute window to take a picture. TikTok, of course, is quick in and out, but we have to think about how are we approaching the lessons and the activities that we're giving our students if this is true. And I truly believe that it is true. So, but they want to be part of something bigger. And I think that's where we fit in as world language teachers. We can help them do that. We can create shared experiences for them. So hopefully throughout this presentation, I'll give you some ideas. First of all, I've said this in a million presentations. If you guys have heard me speak, I'm sorry. No, you know that I'm a big advocate in building student relationships. That is the first and foremost thing that we have to do, because I don't start anything until I get to know who am I dealing with, right? And each semester is different. Each class is different. You might have a couple classes of the same level of language, and they're so different, right? So you just have to be ready to and be flexible, and that's the beauty of being a teacher. But how do you get to know your students? Well, I ask them. I try to trust them and empower them and help them through different situations, not just Spanish related. That's the language I teach. It's about life stuff too. And if you think about the world language classroom, think about everything that we're bringing to the table for them. We're teaching them how to communicate with other people. We're making them use their voices. How many times these kids just sit back and do this? Right? Or they have their earbuds in and they have absolutely no idea what's happening in the world around them. But in the world language classroom, in our classrooms, we're challenging them to do more and to get up and act and draw and do all kinds of things. When I think in other classrooms, they're kind of sitting passively listening, or maybe not listening at all. So we have a huge platform to make them get up and do things that are real life experiences. And above and beyond, just laugh with your kids, show emotion with them. I also am a firm believer that if you can tie emotion to learning, then you're golden. Like we watch some sad stuff in my level 3 class, and the kids never know if I'm going to start crying or not, even though I've seen the shorts or whatever, the movies a million times. I get very emotional. And it's okay, because I think it's fine if we show emotion with students. But most of all, just love what you do and laugh with them and talk to them. That's how you get to know people. How do you get to know anyone in your life? You talk to them. So get to know your students first. Acknowledge that every single learner is different, okay? We will talk a little bit, scratch the surface about differentiation. A couple of, I don't know, maybe a year or two ago, I did a session specifically for you guys about scaffolding and differentiating. You'll see and hear some of that come through in this presentation as well, but that's not really the focus. So just know that we know this. Every learner's different. Abby, I'm ready for more. At the top, let's go, right? Anna, I came to learn. Yes, Ethan, I'll try my hardest. Even though he might not be the strongest student you have. David, what are we doing? What did you say? What are we doing? Jessica, I don't get it. Sarah, did I miss anything when I was gone? Did the world stop turning when I was absent? And Austin, just let me sit in the back of the room. Let me be quiet back here. I don't want anybody to engage with me. Right. And obviously I'm overgeneralizing a little bit, but you know it's true. Every single class we have is blended. When Carmen mentioned that you're focusing on proficiency this semester, I was like, whoa, that's a huge topic, because I'm certainly no expert on proficiency. All you need to know is that every student, even if you're teaching like a level 1 class and we start at novice low and we build our way up, every student, even within the novice range, is going to be at a different proficiency level, really. So again, we're going to talk through some strategies or different activities that I do to try to engage all students while meeting them at different levels. Okay. This is from the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction. Now, you guys know that we're finally starting to go through the process of eventually, in about 5 years, I think, change our essential standards. It's been a while since we had new essential standards. And the process, if you've sat in any of the webinars, is a very long process. It takes time to make this a really good and viable experience for everyone. And so it takes about 5 years. But for now, they have some amazing resources for you on their website. And this is the one I just wanted to point out. This hand right here that you can see on the screen right there tells you that this is clickable. So when you have the link to the presentation, you can open the document. You're probably super familiar with this document anyway. It's the bridging document. And it just kind of says like outcomes for the different levels of language. So this is just level, the plus program, and then level 1. But different things that students should know, be able to do, and understand at the end of each level. This is why sometimes when I jump into my level 3 classes at the beginning of the semester, I'm always expecting them to be at a higher proficiency level than they are, and they're just not there. I mean, it's not their fault. Learning language in a classroom is a lot different than being dropped off in a foreign country and having to survive every day. It's different what we do. We try to simulate real experiences as much as we can. We try to practice and we do the things that we know we should be doing. We listen and we speak and all those things, but it just takes time to build proficiency. So when you think about this topic of proficiency, it's a huge, overwhelming topic because it's so hard to know where to start. So if you think about these documents that DPI has on their website, And if you click this link right here, once you have the document open, it'll take you to even more resources. But just make sure, that everything is very prescriptive in this level. A lot of us probably teach level 1. So memorize words, phrases, everyday topics. Okay. The stuff has to be practiced. It's not like they're going to just be able to create stuff on their own because they don't have the skills necessary to do that yet. So don't expect too much too soon, but also don't lower your expectations so that your students don't rise to the challenge, because they can do it, right? If you think about the way that children acquire language naturally, I have a almost 3-year-old niece and almost a 1-year-old nephew. They spend a year listening before they say anything out loud other than blah, and do the thing. So the fact that our language students come into our classrooms and we're asking them to speak immediately is pretty big leap, because that is not how we acquire language. But obviously, we can't wait a year before asking our kids to produce. And so we do move them along the continuum a little bit faster. But use this document as you work through some of the activities. I created a choice board for you guys. I know that you need to do some things with your professional development. So hopefully you'll make a connection with something I've suggested that you do. And maybe you need to come back to this document. Hopefully that'll help you. Now, the other piece about being realistic, this is the R that we're in right now, right? Is that we have to be true to who we are too. Okay, so this graphic says it all to me, right? We start school in August. Ooh, we're good in December because we're like, Christmas is coming and everything, or the holidays are here, and we are, and maybe I'm going to see some snow. I live in Boone, North Carolina. So, but you know what? We haven't really seen any snow this year either. And now we're like, here's where we are right now, February. Oh yeah, man, it's a long time till spring break. But then, yeah, and then it's the last day. We'll be here before you know it, right? And the school year will be over again. It's crazy. And you guys are probably still feeling a little bit of the post-COVID gaps in learning that we're filling up here in Watauga County as well. So again, I'm going to talk to you about how we've tried to accommodate some of that. But this is my coffee intake, 100% every day. Amount of time we have for lunch, none. Energy that's left at the end of the day, even less than that. Over here, what do we have? 123,456,789, the number of hours we spend assessing student learning. Just kidding, but not quite. 3 out of 5 teachers work 2 jobs. I don't know if that's true. I made that up, but that seems about right. About half the teachers I know have a second job. I teach at the university. It's only 1 class, but it's still another job. And 100% is the amount we want to give every single day in the classroom. And that I do not discount. I believe that. But again, this is our reality. We're in the category of realistic. So keep that in mind as you're sitting in professional development. You've all got a million things running through your heads. I'm there every time I go to something like that. I'm like, I've got to do something else. But maybe take a minute and let this presentation inspire you and relax you into feeling like, first of all, you're doing something that's great for kids and for world language learners, but also that hopefully it's going to validate what you're already doing and maybe give you a couple of new ideas. Remember, I'm just a teacher like you guys are, and we have a super important job. So we're all in this together. Okay, another way that you might actually get through this is to survive is to collaborate and share with anyone who will listen. So you might be a singleton at your school, meaning that you're the only language teacher at your school. Hopefully these PD sessions bring you guys together so that you can feel like there's someone else out there, because teaching can be a very isolated profession. So reach out to Twitter chat groups, attend the Foreign Language Association of North Carolina. They have a conference coming up March 4th in Charlotte. It's just a 1-day, well, Friday and Saturday, but the main conference is Saturday and the Friday is for dual immersion programs. So there's a lot of opportunity without having to go too far. Look for virtual things and just see if you can connect with someone. Reach out to me if you want to talk through some things. I can set up a Zoom meeting with you, or just we can email, whatever you need. But help each other, because there's so many great teachers out there and so many good ideas already floating around. There's no need for you to start from scratch. This is my department, by the way. This is me. I am the department chair, and we have 5 Spanish teachers. We just hired Diego, so we're really, really blessed. We've only got 1 high school in Watauga County. I know, don't even, it's just a small county, 9 schools total. So, and then we have 1 French teacher who's amazing, but poor thing, she has to do all the French classes by herself. Heather Keller, she's great. Okay, so that was realistic. Again, the main focus or takeaway from that is to know your students, but also be true to who you are. Know yourself. Okay. Realign. Here's the other realign. Change it to change or restore to a different or former position or state, to change one's position or attitude with regard to a person, organization, or cause. Now, for this section, I am suggesting that we think about our learning targets, okay? And I borrowed this. There are lots of different resources for this acronym REAL, which worked out great for my BeReal presentation. But these are the letters, and I just changed the words a little bit: readiness, endurance, assessment, and leverage. And so in Watauga County, we have PLTs or PLCs, professional learning teams, or whatever you guys call them. We call them PLTs, professional learning teams. And we meet in a special time of our day. We have students come in and they can get support. They can be retaught something, or they can be extended on something that they already know how to do well. And then my team, we meet every Friday to discuss gaps in learning and tighten things up. We give common formative assessments, things like that. So one of the things we're tasked with every semester is to unpack our standards. So we use our power standards. And to me, the power standards for world languages are the modes of communication, right? Interpretive, interpersonal, and presentational. And then we hone in on what students should know, be able to do, and understand at each level, and then each unit of study that we do. Now, we do not operate with any kind of textbook series. And so we're very, it's up to us kind of what we want to do. So we've gone through in the past couple of years and really tightened up after COVID, when things were so chaotic. We came together again and said, let's not start from scratch, but let's start over. We pulled our students. We arranged things in a way that was logical for us. Now, I hate to tell you this, but even after less than 2 years of being in this new phase, we're about to maybe revisit it. And I just want to scream, because I feel like I've done this all the time. But in a way, I'm okay with it, because I think it's what keeps us fresh. But when vetting your standards and when thinking about proficiency and what you want your students to know and be able to do at the end of a certain level, look at your learning targets, look at your power standards, and say, readiness, what are the essential skills to help students move to the next level? Endurance, are they sustainable? Yeah. Or even, do they spiral from one unit of study to another, or from one level to another? One of the things we did, which I thought was very helpful, is we took the AP themes and kind of planned backwards. You know, backwards design is one of my favorite things to talk about. But we went backwards and said, now, what does an AP theme look like in the level 1 class? And that's how we began to spiral up all the vocab and the structures and the themes that we wanted to get to help our students reach that level. And assessment, how will you assess the learning targets? And as an authentic way as possible. That's hard in the classroom. And leverage, do your students see connections between what they're doing in your class to other life experiences that they're going through? So think real when you're looking at your learning targets. And it's the same thing I'm going to have my professional learning team go through as we decide if we are on the right track or not, for the millionth time. But these are, again, if you've heard me present, then you've probably seen our learning targets are color coded, different skills or different colors. This is something we might be going away from. I'm not sure yet, but this is our second unit of level 1, my identity. We have our student-friendly learning targets. We changed our wording to not yet getting there and got it, not yet being that growth mindset. Well, I can't do it yet, but that doesn't mean I won't ever be able to do it. And then we have them reflect at the end of the day. We also have them set goals. Let me go forward and then backwards. We have them set a weekly language goal. So on Monday, we put the date, they decide what their goal is going to be. and then they reflect on Friday. So every Monday they get out their I can statements and reflect on Friday. And that gives them a chance to be in front of those, in front of those statements every single week. And then I give them a snapshot of what's going to happen for the week. They can choose to set their goal based on one of these I can statements, or they can set their own goal that's based on one of these. So I don't have to spend a lot of time going through this with them because they can see those. They'll be like, let me set my goal for the week. And then it becomes part actually of their unit assessment. They turn this in, they turn in their checked off I can statements, or wherever they feel like they are. A lot of them, we just finished our first unit in level 1, and a lot of them felt like they were getting what we were doing, but some of them are still in the getting there phase, and that's fine. That tells me a lot. They reflected in English, they submitted it, and it becomes part of their assessment. At the end of the semester, we started building in time to do a complete portfolio where they reflect on the whole semester to see where they started and then where they ended up. And that's a huge thing too in building proficiency. I did not include the portfolio in this presentation. Now that I think about it, I probably should have. So if you would like to see what we created, I'll be happy to share that with you too, because that's a nice way to see how they feel their proficiency has grown over time. I also do spend a couple days at the beginning of each semester talking about the 5 C's, the World Readiness Standards, and also about building proficiency. And I try to relate it to something that they had to learn how to do. So our kids up here all ski or snowboard because I'm in the mountains, and they understand what that's like. Oh, I remember when I first learned to ski, I was novice and I fell a lot and I made a lot of mistakes. Yes. So then they can take that information and relate it to learning another language. Pretty cool. Okay, so that's them setting goals. Remember, we're realigning. That's the reel we're on right now. And I mentioned that my department / professional learning community, we're talking about maybe going even deeper with these learning targets. And we're going to add more communicative goals because right now, I don't think we're doing a very good job of that. I don't think any of us think we're doing a good job of that. So we're going to make sure we're focusing on the skills within each mode and maybe realigning our learning targets to fit in these categories so that students will know what they should be, they'll have a goal for reading and a goal for viewing, a goal for listening, and et cetera, multiple goals, but they'll be categorized that way so that they can really see what's happening. So I'll keep you posted as maybe if you get to come to Flank in the fall, I'll have some new information ready for you. Fingers crossed. Okay. All right, a little bit about input and output. So I do not have the book in front of me, but our department is doing a book study on Common Ground. It's like bridging second language acquisition theory to the actual classroom. And it's written by Florencia Henshaw and Maris Hawkins. And I would highly recommend that maybe you guys take a look at the book, Common Ground. It's on Amazon. I'm not working for them or anything, but we have found we're doing a book study. My department's doing a book study. It's very manageable. It's not very long, but those of us who have been teaching a long time, we haven't been in the classroom as a student in a long time, learning about second language acquisition theory and feeling what that's like now in the world language classroom. And I think this book does a nice job of bridging that. So they have a couple of chapters. It's just 6 chapters long, but they have a chapter on input and one on output. So they're suggesting, again, I'm trying to have you rethink about your learning targets and your goals for what you're doing in terms of what level of proficiency you teach, but input must be understandable. Also, as we're trying to help students with their literacy skills and with their comprehension skills, it must be understandable what we're giving them. If we just stand in front of them and speak the target language 90% of the time, which is what ACTFL recommends, we know we have to use visuals and do things and act things out because I can't just stand up there and use the language and expect them to get it, right? So I have to do a lot of other things to support them. Input should focus on meaning, and sources of input, we'll talk about that. Visuals, authentic resources, all kinds of things, so that students can give us output. I'm going to sneeze and I'm really sorry. Excuse me. So output relies on input. What am I going to give back to you if I don't know what's coming into me? Does that make sense? Put good in, get good out, right? That's an orange juice commercial slogan, but it's important to give them good input so that you'll get the output that you need. Output should express meaning And we do that through speaking and writing. Okay. And check out the book, Common Ground. Next. Oh, God, I went too far. Okay. Authentic resources all over the place, all the time, every day, as much as you can. You want the experience that you're simulating in your classrooms to be as real as possible. So you could do that through videos, commercials. This says signage. Infographics are my very, very favorite thing. Music, podcasts, social media posts. I use a lot of social media things in the class. I did a session for you guys about social media last year, so maybe you have access to that. Using images, art, books, magazines, newspapers, blog posts, anything, all of the things that are on the screen and more. Okay, so I just tried to clip a few images of things. This is a sign from Lowe's Hardware in my own community in Boone, and some songs. Again, my favorite, you'll see in some of my student examples in just a minute, are the infographics, because they're limited in what they say. They have a lot of statistical information. There are a lot of visuals, and the students can just eat it up. Okay, so go authentic all the time. That's, again, why I got the idea to use BeReal as the platform for this, because the quick image that you take is as real as it gets. It's what you're doing in the moment. It's authentic. And so I was like, yes, authentic resources. Now I'm going to mention a name to you, Leslie Gran, Grahn, Leslie Gran. And if you just Google her and search, she has her website is Gran for Lang. And then she has this amazing Pinterest board that's full, I'm talking busting full, with authentic resources for every language I can imagine. She's done all the work for you. She's really gone in and vetted everything. The other thing I do is when I'm searching for these authentic resources, I think they're coming right now, if my computer will move forward. Okay, here they come. So as you're looking for authentic resources, thank goodness for Google. I don't even know what we would do without the Google, but I just Google like whatever topic I'm going to get into, like infografía medio ambiente, so environment infographic, and you won't believe the images that come up. Now, the hard part is thinking about the proficiency level that you're teaching and saying, okay, what can I do with novice low kids in this infographic? And that's where the real skills come in. Okay. Again, I didn't list, I've shown you a few infographic samples, and I apologize to those of you who are not Spanish teachers. My examples are in Spanish, but you can do the same thing for your language too. Okay. You just search for whatever the word for infographique. I don't know the French word, but you'll search the word and then you'll be able to find what you're looking for. And I suggest you maybe sit down with somebody and think about questions together that you could ask students so that you know they're understanding the content. And again, I'm happy to share examples of what we've done. Now, this is a video about prejudices, as you can see, and it's actually a Coca-Cola commercial, and it's all in the target language. This is linked for those of you who are Spanish teachers as well. So it's really powerful. And I just do a little reflection form from students, and they're novice low, and they give me their first impression of the people they see in the video, and then their second impression of people they see in the video. And then we're able to have a nice chat about don't judge a book by its cover. Okay. Again, this is an infographic. It's a little more text than the ones I normally use, but again, they're images. We talk about digital identity and being socially responsible on the web. And so we talk about social media platforms and which ones do they use and how do they use them. And so I might use something like this, even in level 1. This is also a commercial from Nike, and it's full of actions and sports. See, Frida? Yeah, it's full of that if you want to use it for that reason. But it also has a really good message. Find your greatness. Okay. These are all just things I'm able to Google and find. A Five Guys menu and any menu that you want. But this is a restaurant that students know and can relate to. And so we'll do some questions and activities with things like this. Again, here's another infographic. You can see lots of visual images. They're not going to know every single word, but obviously some of the literacy things I'll talk to you about later, cognates are the biggest one. Now, it might not be that the language you teach is very similar to English, but the language I teach is super parallel, and they're able to understand sentence structure and a lot of what they read from these infographics because of the images, but also because of the idea of cognates. So we milk this as much as we can, and the kids are always very impressed with what they're able to do. I just closed that out, and I didn't mean to do that. Okay, let's go backwards. Sorry. Goodness, it's been a long day, right? Okay, moving forward, hopefully. Again, using art, we use art a lot. And one of the AP themes is like aesthetics and that kind of thing. So we start early on with using art. We might even use the same pieces of art throughout different levels of language that we teach, so the kids get really familiar with them. And then they're able to do so much with them by the end, by the time they get to AP. I will tell you this, very often in levels 1 and 2, if we use infographics like you just saw with the sports thing, we might ask the question in English, and you're like, oh, we're supposed to use the target language. Yes, but sometimes I feel like if I use the target language, the kids smart enough to go straight to the thing where I mentioned the target language piece, and they pull it out and they put it on the paper, and they have no idea what it means, right? So by asking the question in English, you know for sure that they understand what the text is saying. So it's all about what you're trying to get out of the students. So don't be afraid. I'm sorry if this is against your policy, but for us, we're not afraid to use English. If the question's in English, they're allowed to answer in English. If the question's in Spanish, they must answer in the target language. It just depends on what the goal of your activity is, okay? But I will let you know that with a lot of these infographics, especially at the lower levels, we ask the question in English just to make sure they understand. But then later, once they understand, we might have them do an activity with the infographic in the target language. So first, we're just checking for comprehensibility and understanding, and then we'll have them interact with the infographic in another way. Our French teacher is excellent in that. Okay, so we've gone through realistic and realign, and now we are at realize. And this is becoming fully aware of something as a fact, understand clearly, cause something desired or anticipated to happen, right? We want our students to realize the potential that languages can offer them in the high school and beyond, right? So I teach in a very isolated rural county, and a lot of my students have traveled. Some of them have never traveled. They've never done anything. They've never gone anywhere. So I see one of my big jobs as just to expose them to the rest of the world. And I get to do that every single day. And they're all excited. They're like, oh, we're going to study abroad. I mean, I talk up all kinds of things because I can only build their proficiency so much. I teach levels 1 and 3. I can only take them so far. The other teachers help get them a little bit farther, but my goal is to get them so pumped up and to say, you know, really good colleges and universities like to see at least 3 or 4 levels of language. And if you want to see me again in level 3, you got to take level 3. So I just really try to get them excited about continuing their language studies, so that I know that once they leave my high school, that they'll go on and continue. That's the goal of the community, see, right? Just to make lifelong language learners. So realize, let's see what is in this section. Okay, as we go through this, I want you to keep in mind, this is the teacher's point of view versus the student's point of view. This is me every day. I really think I'm Michael Keating, you know, Dead Poet Society. Oh, Captain, my Captain. I want to inspire these children every single day. I want to teach them to be empathetic, caring, passionate. You know, I talk about all the presentations I give and all the places I get to go and all the people I've met and everything. And I'm very blessed, and I don't take that for granted, but I share everything with my students. And then again, I look at them and this is what I see right here, right up in here, students' point of view. Now, not all of them, but a lot of them. And so there's a big disconnect. Remember that concept of the duality of the camera. Who am I looking at and who are they looking back at? So who am I seeing and what did they see? Again, keep that in mind as we go through this part, as we try to help each other realize that we're there for a bigger picture, okay? For something more important than just teaching language. We're there to teach people how to exist and how to be just more globally minded and be more concerned about others. Okay, so a couple of things you've heard me talk about before, if you've seen any of my presentations. And this is where we're starting to get into more of the proficiency, helping build proficiency, but also some of the literacy things that I know you're focusing on. So front loading, how do we front load information? Now, on each of these main pages, I have listed 2 articles for you. I didn't go through them with a fine-tooth comb, but I looked at some things that I thought might be helpful for those of you who want more information. So I put here 3 bullets: be intentional, visualize learning, and observe outcomes. So a couple things I've done to front load information. I mentioned the world readiness standards that I have my students actually, this is clickable, by the way, you can open it, but they have to brainstorm what they think the 5 C's mean before we have a conversation about it. And I tell them that those world readiness standards are what they can expect from me each day. I always talk about, what are my classroom expectations? But hey, I'm in the classroom too, so what can they expect from me? So we already have a nice, good conversation. We do this the first week of the semester. This is when we talk about building proficiency and how to learn a language so that they know how to approach the class. I don't just throw them in. Yes, I do speak to them in the target language, the first few days just to get them going. But we also pause and have some real good and deep conversations about how and why are we there in the first place? How do we learn a language in the first place? And why are we there? So this is one of the things I do to front load what they will be hearing and seeing throughout the semester with me. Also, I might use one of the many, many sticky note online things. We are a one-to-one school, so each student has a device. And so we do a lot of different activities where I might have them brainstorm. What do you think you know? What do you want to know? What do you think you know? What do you want to know? That also helps to front load information. We read a short story in level 3, Juan Bobo, it's a classical character like Forrest Gump, sort of. And so before we even start, I might give them some images and let them sort of make inferences or draw conclusions. What kind of person is Juan Bobo going to be? And they get a little bit exposed to him, but that's all front loading. Trivia, I might introduce a country or concept by asking them trivia questions, and then we'll go deeper into the discussions that we're going to have later on. Again, this is just setting the scene for what's coming. Okay, I know that's fast, but you got a lot to do. You got a lot more to hear. Okay, differentiation. Again, this is quick, but we already know everyone learns differently. But go back to what students like, okay? I always ask my students what they're into. I try to, not always, but watch what they're watching, read what they're reading if I can, and just stay in tune. Like now, I'm not going to lie to you guys. Some of the slang they're using right now, I have absolutely no idea what they're talking about. Like none whatsoever. I like your fit, Scott Dog. My fit? Oh, my outfit. Yeah, okay. Now that one I could figure out, but some of these other words, I'm like, whatever. I'm locked in. Okay, you better lock in because we're going today, right? That's what they always say. I'm locked in today, Scott Dog. Okay, well let's try to move on from there because I'm so old. I feel so old. Okay, and think about what's easy to differentiate. Don't feel like you have to do it all. I also listed a couple of articles for you there, and these are differentiation articles specifically for the world language classroom. So hopefully that'll help. A couple of ways I approach differentiating things. First of all, there are lots of different types of ways you can differentiate, but Carol Ann Tomlinson is the queen of differentiation, and she mentions that there are 3 main types: outcomes, that you might give the same work to students but expect different results based on students' different levels of ability, or in this case, levels of proficiency, right? So I know a certain student is going to be able to give me more than another one, but that's okay. As long as each of them is trying to close the gap from where they were before, I'm okay with it. The task, I might actually group students by ability or interests. The one I try to do the most often, however, is by giving them choices. Do this or that. Do this part or this part. Do this activity or this activity. Or they have a board of activities and they get to choose half of them or whatever interests them the most or whatever they think they need the most help with. You've probably heard me mention quick checks. Again, we got this idea a long time ago from a teacher, and this idea that we give them an authentic resource. Here's an authentic resource. We give them 3 levels to choose from. This should say C, novice low up here, then novice mid, novice high. If they give us all of the things, all of the pieces, then they get the A. If they go through novice low and novice mid, they get a B, and novice low, they get the C. Now, no one ever stops at a C because, I'm trying to build that intrinsic motivation, that growth mindset. But these are easy things to see if students are able to understand. That's a level 1, and this is a level 3. This is a video. And again, you can see they're writing in English. This is the Spanish with the English, and then they're reflecting in English. So I'm okay with that because I need to know that they understand what they're hearing in the target language. And this video isn't easy, it's fast. And so my students might have to watch it a few times. But they're called quick checks. This ends up taking a little bit longer at this level because it's a little bit more involved. But again, it's a good indicator of what students are able to understand. So these are very interpretive. Again, here's that idea of this or that, where they choose this. I believe this presentation is linked for you as well. Yeah. And this was for a heritage Spanish class. So if some of the activities look a little harder, you'll be like, whoa, I know she's not doing that with level 1s. No, this was my colleague's heritage Spanish speakers class, native speakers class. But you can check that out. So they get to choose what you want to do, this one or this one. Again, choice boards are awesome. And so I might have them choose 1 or 2 presentational activities and 1 or 2 interpretive activities. Typically, when we do choice, everyone does the interpersonal because everyone needs to practice speaking or writing interpersonally, and then they get to choose the other ones that they want to do. So it's not complete choice. Again, if you know me, you know I'm a big advocate of Edpuzzle. And Edpuzzle is a platform that allows you to embed a video and then to pause and ask questions. And very often again, you've heard me say I use animated shorts, sometimes with no language at all. Now, very often I'll use authentic videos with actual language and ask for the comprehension checks. But sometimes I don't want that. I want to see what students are able to give or produce. So in this case, all these little points down here, they're open-ended, and then students just can type and say what they can. So that allows for differentiation because, again, one student's going to be able to give me more than another student, and that's okay. And I'll take what I can get basically from each of them. Okay. Scaffolding, chunking information, providing support, and modeling for your students. Again, 2 articles about scaffolding that might help you. I guess it's taken me a long time to think about backwards design and choosing my learning targets and being deliberate in what I teach. And again, since we don't use a textbook series, all that's very open-ended for us. But as I get older and as I plan more, I get better and better at scaffolding and thinking about maybe this should come before this because it makes more sense to support students in this way before I'm asking them to do something else, right? So that comes with time. But a couple of things I might do is literally one of the things that we've started doing is just giving them the words that we want them to use, right? We are not into verb charts anymore. I just give them the sentence starters or the sentence frames that I want them to use, because believe it or not, with enough practice and stretching them a little bit more, it does become part of what they're able to do and say without me having to give them 6 forms of a verb each time, right? So thinking about giving them some support, a couple of different things. This is a tool called Wiser. Again, if you've heard me speak, you've heard me talk about Wiser. It's one of the listed tools I have in just a minute, but you can see right here, La casa tiene and la casa hay, la casa es. We've literally given them what we want them to start the sentence with, and they have to just hit the record button and talk. And after they do that a few times, it's part of what they can say. I don't have to say, oh, here's how you conjugate the verb tener, right? They just need to know la casa tiene and move on. And that's how we have begun to get a lot more out of our beginning level students than we ever did when we were conjugating verbs. Yay. Also, teaching my kids to level up. The top row, yes, I understand everything that they're trying to say. It's not grammatically correct, but I do understand the message. So then we talk about, how do you make this better? What can you do? How can you make this stronger? And this is just using a simple Jamboard, which is free, very easy to use. You could just use paper. You don't have to use technology. I used to call this respuesta automática, like what is the first thing that comes to your mind when you see these images? And I would give these same images to my students on one day, have them write down one word that comes to their mind. The next day, give them their note card back and show them the same images and have them write down another word that comes to my mind. Eventually, they take all the words that they created. It's hard. It gets harder the more times we do it because they're running out of words. But then they have to put all of those things together to create some kind of complete thought. So this is taking it into chunks and scaffolding by putting words into a complete thought later on. Actually, haven't used this in a long time, and I think I'll bring it back, maybe modernize some of the images. But also this idea of pechakucha, it's a Japanese style of presenting, if I'm not mistaken. I presented at ACTFL like this one time with a group of teachers, and it was so fun, but so hard. You have 20 slides and 20 seconds to talk about each slide. So my section, I can't remember the topic, but that was my presentation. It was fun. So again, we're using authentic art images with students, and they have to say whatever they can. You can see descriptions, like, dislikes, actions, anything that they can say, and they're just talking at their table groups, and I'm walking around just listening to what they're saying. And again, I'm not focused on accuracy. I'm focused on if they can sustain and try to produce as much as they can. So things like this help eventually. If you say things enough out loud, then it's going to be easier when you have to write it, right? Okay. Again, this presentation is linked for you. It's just a little notebook, quote notebook. It's a Google slide presentation that's animated, sort of, that gives students like sentence starters and sentence frames, and they just fill in with their schedule, their classes, or whatever. And then we turn this into a presentational speaking activity, and we use a single point rubric to assess them, and they just present about their schedules. And then the students have to go back and forth talking about, well, this class is really hard. Is your class hard? Or what time do you have this class? And then we make it interpersonal. But everything at the beginning is very scaffolded because it's set up. It's very prescriptive, and you can open this and look at it when you have more time. Clip-O-Matic is a tool you might have seen before. These videos are obviously both active, but you can watch them, and it's an app on your phone, and you can, whatever you're videotaping, it will put the language on top of it. So it creates automatic captions. So that's another nice scaffolding support for them. Also, I mentioned in scaffolding, you model for students. So if I ask them to do something, I give them some kind of example, usually. This is me when I was a little bit younger, and using Flip, not Flipgrid anymore, right? Flip. Okay, finally, literacy skills, and this is going to be fast, but 2 more articles if you want to read up on that a little bit more. Use what you know. That means use cognates, and we're going to talk about that. Visualize reading again, and annotate and underline, highlight. I love me some highlighters. So a couple things I do, obviously, these are skills that we use when learning whatever language. I know I did the same thing, and I still do the same thing when I'm reading a book. I'm constantly highlighting and underlining because that's how my brain processes information. I'm a note taker. But in this case, I get my level 3s, just some quick little snippets, and I highlighted the words for them, and I made them read the passage and try to figure out what the highlighted words meant by using context clues without looking anything up. They couldn't look anything up. Now, the caveat to this was there's a third one that's not shown here, but we had listened to these 2 days earlier. This is, if you Google Spanish proficiency exercises, these come from Texas. They're not authentic because they're made for language learners, but we had listened to these 3, and they had to write down words they understood. And then 2 days later, I showed them the actual text. And finally, someone catches on that, is this what we listened to the other day? I was like, yeah. So they had already heard some of the words before. And then I think that helped them define the word. So that was pretty cool, full circle process for them. Also, I got permission to share this with you from Stephanie Howell. I just stumbled upon it on Twitter. It's called Tabletop Twitter. And I thought it might be something, I haven't actually used this yet, but I thought it might be something that you guys would want to use. You just, whatever, it's 140 characters to describe what you just learned, or maybe something they just read. And then this one over here says what graphic or diagram or sketch comes to mind. Share your tweet with a friend and get him to retweet it by adding one more idea. Isn't that brilliant? And then how can you summarize the entire idea in a hashtag? I just think this is very clever. And she was like, yeah, share, share, share. And so I am definitely going to be using this semester as we move forward. Oops, excuse me. The Freyer model's been around for a long time. And again, this just helps students hone in on specific words, and you can see concepts, and then a similar kind of thing where they're just giving a definition or non-examples, examples. I love the non-example part because sometimes we're constantly thinking of all these things that are similar, but what's not similar. So maybe this would be useful for you. You can just Google that too. I mentioned Wambobo earlier, and so what I might do is give students, I divide up the story. I don't have a copy of the story for you, but the version I use, I divide it up into what I call quadrants, and I focus vocab in that quadrant. They get the vocab first, they might look it up, and then they find it in where it is in the story, and then they have to illustrate one quadrant at a time. That helps with their literacy processing, so that the goal of input, the book says, Common Ground says, that they're not going to understand everything they hear or they read, and that's obviously true. Even sometimes in English, I don't understand everything I read, but this really helps them focus on this, their first short story they've read. This is level 3, and they can see the vocab that they looked up, but they can also just focus on one small piece of the story at a time instead of seeing the whole thing at one time. It's just helps them, and then they have to illustrate what they think is happening. And my students are very successful with this. So hopefully that'll give you some ideas. Okay, real technology. Again, this is not a tech-heavy session, but I'm just mentioning 4 things to you. Everyone uses Flip, Flipgrid, Flip. These icons are all linked for you, okay? Lots of different ways you can use Flip. I have my students do presentations, and then other students watch, and they might have to ask follow-up questions, or you can turn those presentations into QR codes. You could do a gallery walk in the hallway. So presentational speaking becomes interpretive listening, anything, just so many different things you want to do with Flip. You know how to do it. You've been using it. Wiser is the quote online worksheet thing that you saw a minute ago with the houses. Lots of different things. I can record my voice. Students can record voices, videos. They can rearrange things. They can match things up. Tons of different, they can do cloze activities, they can do multiple choice. It's just a variety of different things that they can do. And sometimes I might give one version to a group of students and a slightly easier or harder version to other students, because they're so easy to tweak and change for differentiation. Edpuzzle is my all-time favorite, like I mentioned, with the animated shorts or the authentic videos. Students can actually record responses now too, which is brilliant. And I have them do that if they feel like they're ready. They are still allowed to type if they're open-ended, but a lot of mine want to talk, so they do that. Now, video, and I'm going to show you, is something that I haven't used officially, but I always like to challenge myself when I do a presentation. And so this is Abby, and she gave me permission to use this. She's a level 3 student, and you can see these comments are in English, but this site is out of the University of Minnesota, and it's free, and it allows you to annotate videos. Now, the tricky thing is, if I share this one link with students, with all the students, then you can see all the different annotations are going to come up. So I have had 3 people look at this, and there are 3 different colors. Now, some of these I might not want every student to look at, so I'd have to create different links to send them so that each group or whatever has their own video. So that might take a little longer, but I do see a lot of value in this. Now, the way I use this, I'm going to come out of the presentation and try to show you this live. Okay. Maybe. So this is Abby. I had them introduce themselves on Flip, and most of my students talked for like 30 to 40 seconds, and look at her time, 2 minutes and 39 seconds. And I was so impressed with what she did and how she stayed in the language. I'm not going to show you the whole thing, but this is a level 3 student. I had a level 1 student watch this, and that is the one in yellow. And I said, every time she does something like, you know, whatever, you reflect on it. And so she did. And then I had a colleague do that. So I'm going to play this a little bit, and I want you to see every time there's a line right here. It's when someone has annotated the video, and you'll see it highlight right here. Okay, watch this.
Me llamo Abby Smith. Yo tengo 17 años. Yo soy de Florida,
Here it comes, see?
pero yo vivo en Galax, Virginia, para 10 años. Y
Okay. Now, so I made her watch her own video, which was a lot, but obviously she still made a couple of mistakes, but she changed in the annotation, she changed what that she should have said I lived there for however long, 10 years, whatever. But I really, really think that this has tons of possibilities. So I'm hoping that with your with thinking about literacy, thinking about proficiency, you can use Video Ant. If you do, just let me know, and I am going to try to start using it as well. And so maybe together we can figure out some more cool ways to use it, because I think it's awesome. Okay, let's move on. We're almost done, guys. You've been such good listeners. Thank you. Here we go. Okay, you know me. I'm all about some reflection. So it's time for you to reflect on your students and on yourself. So go back to that initial image, the duality, the front camera versus the rear camera, the back camera. Don't forget, now think through this more. Who are you teaching every day? Who are you looking at, and who are they looking at? Okay, so there's a lot. What do you see in your what do they see in your lessons, and what do you see in yourself? And keep this in mind. All this is happening at the same time. You're giving, they're taking, they're looking at you for lots of things, for guidance, for language, for everything, and just somehow meet in the middle. Okay, because this is important. Everything that you do is important. Just whatever you do, remember to be real, be realistic. Now, these are some other BeReals I've been taking lately. I only got the app for this session, then I'm going to delete it because I don't like having to take a picture in the middle of the night. BeReal. This is real glad it's Friday. Realistic. My bandwidth was up. My BeReal. Real rest. That's me getting ready to watch some television at night. Realign. Think about everything you do. Collaborate. Talk it out with people. Here's the book Common Ground. This says Too Real. Good friends just trying to help each other out, trying to be real by learning new things, reading this book, doing it together. Real-time planning, always. And finally, realize. Remember, you're here to have your students realize Friday feels, Mondays be like, and this is why we do what we do every single day for the kids, right? So in all things, for all people in your lives, especially to yourselves, just remember to be real. And I thank you for your time. You can reach me at carmenscoggins@gmail.com, and the URL for this, I'm sure Carmen's going to give it to you, but it's tinyurl at CC BeReal, Cumberland County BeReal. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I look forward to seeing you at a Flint conference. All right. Ciao.